98.43. And when I first saw this report, I had some questions, and Amanda and Charles explained that to me. When I look at 2022, it's 98.99%. Those numbers are all good. Make no mistake about it. What I was asking Amanda, and she explained to me, that 2021 number is mainly a result of a tax sale that we were able to get done in 2021. That's what resulted in the extra income that makes that percentage go actually above 100%. So if there's, you see the 25 accounts, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hit that. The 25 accounts you see, not all of those are going to be collected, right? That's just the name of the game. But when those penalties and interest come into play, that's where we can get back to 100%, or even sometimes above 100%, to make sure that you have the funding you need. You have what you've hired us to do, is collect those things, collect that money that allows your school district to function. You can see the conclusion. The biggest thing I can leave you with, I'm not going to sit up here and talk forever because I don't know enough. But I can tell you from everything I've seen, from all these reports that I've gone over, this is one of the better reports that I've seen, that I've dealt with. Further on, you're going to see the 2023 tax roll turnover analysis. This is important because it shows, when I talk about turnover, I don't mean to talk too much without explaining things, but that turnover is what happens on July 1st. That's the delinquent taxes that aren't collected by the county, by the collector. And then that turnover is what happens on July 1st. That's where Linebarger comes into play. We deal in delinquent tax collections. You can tell that in 2021, that number was at 607 accounts for $243,323. That 22 is what was just turned over, and you can see that it's 725 accounts for $340,215. That's an increase from 21 to 22 of $96,892. With those numbers, I can tell you right now, our firm, since the turnover, has already gotten to around 54 filings. Is that correct?
46 lawsuits since July 1st on 54 accounts, and then I have another 60 accounts targeted for suit filing throughout the year if they don't pay in full or enter into a payment agreement with our office on behalf of on behalf of the school district. So, we set filings throughout the year.
Mm-hmm.
We keep it and we start high dollar down. So I start with the highest account, and I work it down to about $1,000 on just base tax, and then we go from there. But a lot of the letters help with getting people to call in. We're not trying to scare people or make them feel like we're going to take their property. Where the goal is, how can we remedy the taxes? Can we get you into a sustainable payment agreement and get these taxes paid off and brought current with the district and stuff like that? So, yeah.
I told you she knows what she's doing. Whenever I'm in question, a lot of times I end up in Amanda's office asking, what does this mean? What does this mean? But I'll keep learning. I can tell you, you'll see under the analysis of the delinquent tax roll, that pie chart lines out the delineation of where a lot of the money lies, and then the definitions are on the next page. After that, the work plan and the planned activities for 23 and 24, kind of self-explanatory, but it lets you know what our plan is for this year. We appreciate the ability to work with y'all. We appreciate the opportunity to speak at your meeting. And we've had the opportunity to meet with Dr. Torres previously, and we went over this report, and then we took the opportunity that was given to come speak with you today. I'll answer any questions you got. I might turn around and look at Amanda, to be honest with you, but I really do appreciate being here. Thank y'all. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions? No? No, thank you.
Okay, thank y'all very much.
Did you?
I told you.
I spoke to Dr. Torres. Would y'all be open to, we always are, in the previous administration, we've had a request doing a tax sale on behalf of the school district. Is this something that you all are open to? We have about 24 properties that are coded ready for sale, but it has to be something that's in the past that's been approved by the school district. And typically how we do this, I'll send to Rosie a list of SIS addresses. In the past, the PEMS coordinators will run the address. I don't give a name, I just give an address, and they run it through. For instance, your top account, if you look at that one, the last time I asked for it to go to sale, there is a student that resides that it hit, on the Peems hit, that there was a student. The question is, for y'all, for y'all to think about is, is that the standard that you all wanna keep, or how would you like me to proceed, and our firm to proceed going forward?
So I think what we'll do is we would get with Dr. Torres, and then he can get with y'all and let y'all know.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
I'll send you the accounts and how much is owed and an address. And we don't, I won't provide a name. It'll just be if you hit, and it'll be y'all's decision on which ones you want to proceed with. The things to keep in mind with a tax sale in Johnson County, minimum fees to the constable start off at $600 plus his commissions, plus the fees to the newspaper. It has to circulate in the local newspaper for a minimum of 3 weeks. That is the Cleveland Times Review. Since it's a smaller paper, usually ends up costing a minimum for our ad fee that we pay up front and then we're reimbursed later on is about $1,100. I divide that out across, so it can be, the fees for some of these can get up there, and the goal isn't to ever sell the property. The goal is to utilize a tax sale as a way to facilitate the payment of the taxes. We do, obviously, if we want to pull it and try to enter into a payment agreement, we will do that with them. As we want to work with everybody. We don't want to take someone and sell someone's property. We're here, to just work for y'all and facilitate payment of taxes. So if y'all are open to it, we would love to, start to think about doing a tax sale by the end of the year or the spring of next year. So.
Because
Okay.
that's where you say you get your most feedback is when you actually start to.
Yeah, once we do a sale, like that's when it's like, I guess for some people, a judgment is one thing, but like once you start getting, a sheriff shows up with, paper, or a constable shows up with a notice of intent to sell and his levy and everything, and it's published in the newspaper, that's when some people, and it really takes for some people, oh, okay, this isn't a joke, I can lose the property, if it's not paid and stuff like that, so.
So can I ask one question? Do you know, I know you said like on the top person or the top account, how long has that account been going? Is it 5 years, 10 years?
That one on the top of my head has 2 years of judgment taxes against it, and then it has 2 years of post-judgment taxes. So on that top one, for instance, your base is $13,000, but when you run, it's it's land and mobile home. When you combine it with penalty and interest, it sets at roughly $24,000 owed to the district at this time. But like I said, it was passed on last time around because there was a student, and so that's a decision that lies with y'all. So.
And just to clarify, though, this is after repeated numerous opportunities to try to get folks to take care of.
We,
Right.
let them, they had a chance, it was actually, this one was a default judgment, so no one answered, no one chose to appear in court. Judge signed the default judgment. I have, on the post-judgment year taxes, letters have gone out. When my assistant has downtime, Alicia, she's calling people saying, we'll go back through our file and see if there's any phone numbers. Can we try to get in contact with somebody? I'll send out notice of intent to sell letters, probably depending on when we look to do a sale. I'll send out notice of intent to sell letter 30, 60 days out before I even set it for sale.
Mhm.
And we'll try to get them calling us to get into a payment agreement. One of the accounts on there, if I look at it, he has entered already in a payment agreement. He's aggressively paying his taxes down as much as possible. He's really his situation was especially hurtful. He bought the property from a gentleman and was not aware that the gentleman wasn't paying the property taxes. But he is working really diligently. He is number 8 on your list. He is working very hard to remedy his taxes for the district because he is very proud to be here now, and he's wanting to get this resolved because he knows how he wants his family to be able to stay in Venus and stuff like that. So.
To clarify, yes, there's multiple mailings that have come out. Any attempts we make, if we can make phone calls, we do it. Sometimes the phone calls don't connect, but yes, there's multiple attempts to connect and to make people aware. It's no longer a surprise if that situation were to come about.
We also hired for Suburban, which is what John County calls out, Suburban, which is outside of Tarrant. We just hired a new collector for the suburban counties, and I did make it a special point to request one that is bilingual to help with, I know there's a large population of bilingual residents here, and I wanted somebody on my team that could help bridge that gap between me and the taxpayer and stuff like that going forward.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank y'all very much. I'm sorry.
We will go to item number 7, presentation of student performance and accountability update.
Okay, I've asked Dr. Morgan to come and just kind of give us an update here on a couple of things here regarding our performance from last year, and then also some of the changes. Ms. Camacho is not able to be here tonight, but she's going to speak a little bit on the new accountability system that's in place. Go ahead. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So just let me preface that with Crystal has spent the entire summer learning and trying to understand the new accountability system. So if you have questions that I or Dr. Torres cannot answer, we will definitely make sure she gets them so we can address those. But what we wanted to talk about first was just the changes in our student performance and growth for over the past few years before we touch on accountability, because we think it's important to look at where we are as a district as far as our student performance goes, and then talk about what the state wants to do with accountability ratings. So what you see here is just a snapshot of all students, all grades that were tested on STAR 2018 to 2023. So the blue and red bar are the 2 years right before the COVID absence where we did not test. So you can see where we were at just about 70%, all students, all grades, all subjects approaching the passing level. And then COVID hit, and when we came back the next year, we took a dip, which almost, most districts did. That was to be expected. And then the year after COVID, we came back, we recovered, we rebounded, and we're working our way back up, and then the STAR redesign hit, and we dipped slightly again. But you can see the difference between the green and the orange, the last 2 bars. The difference between our performance in 21-22 to 22-23 is not at all drastic. It was a difference of about 3 percentage points in overall performance. All right, if you want to go ahead and scroll down. So now this is just looking at math, where again you can see the 2 bars before COVID. We were approaching 80% passing all students in math, which was really great. And then of course COVID hit, and it did hit us harder in math than it did in reading. And we've been pretty consistent since that COVID gap at about 60% all students in math approaching grade level. And there was just barely a 1% difference between the year before and this past year. So really that change is negligible. And then if you want to scroll down, we can take a look at reading. Oh, I'm sorry, this is our MAP growth since 2021 when we began administering the MAP growth assessment so that we could track student growth. So that first year, we were learning how to administer the test. It was new. It was also the year coming back from the COVID shutdown. And so that's the percentage of students who met or exceeded their expected growth that year. The following year, we came back pretty strong and had 60% of our students meet or exceed expected growth, which is pretty fantastic. And I think you can see that reflected in the overall STAR performance. And then our overall percentage of students who met or exceeded expected growth did take a slight dip last year. There were some changes in how we administered the test. There was some inconsistencies that we're addressing this year. But overall, still pretty high, close to that 60% mark. All right, now let's take a look at reading language arts. So again, this is all grades who took a reading language arts STAR test since 2017-18. So we have grades 3 through 10 reflected here. Again, performance before COVID, just shy of 70%. It was about 66%. And then we did take a slight dip with COVID, and then with reading, we sprang back pretty quickly where we were right before the COVID gap. And then if you may remember in those years, we discussed a little bit of changes to the STAR test where the year after COVID, they did not administer the writing test at all. It was just a reading test, and that is reflected in the 21-22 scores. And then 22-23 came the redesign, in which not only did they bring back writing to 4th and 7th grade, they brought writing into all grade levels, which had never been tested in writing before. So it was a huge change for our teachers and our students last year with the STAR redesign. So even with those changes, even with the writing taking about 30% of the overall score, you can see the dip was not that drastic. All right, and then we can scroll down and again, look at the map growth changes. So similar story here. Slight dip in the percentage of students who met or exceeded their expected growth, but we're still above the 50% mark, which 50% is typical. So we always want to be above that. All right, and then one more, if you scroll down one more. Last year, even with all the changes in STAR, we still had gains, which Crystal showed you last month. And so in almost every single grade level, we did see an area of gain in STAR performance, which is really incredible given the redesign and the changes that happened with it. All right, so then if you go down one more time. So here we have that same slide with all grades, all subjects, and then our accountability rating overlaid on top of it. So if you will just take a minute to think about where we were in performance and what the letter grade is on the black bar across it. So we started off the first year of this A through F accountability with a C. Then our STAR performance took a slight dip, yet we increased to a B. Then COVID happened and nobody was rated. And then we took a slight dip from where we were before COVID, even though we came back from COVID and still had a B. And then this year, we will have a slight dip in our overall performance, and we don't know what our accountability will be. And what we have been told is that it could dip up to 2 letter grades. So I just wanted you to think about that before we get into accountability. And when we do finally get our rating from the state, think about the changes in our performance, which have not been drastic, and yet the change in accountability that they say might happen. So we just want to keep that in mind when we are thinking about our accountability rating. All right, if you can go on now, please. So accountability, what is happening with that? Go ahead. So first of all, the entire system is changing. We don't have any control over that. TEA decides what the rating system will be, and it is in statute that this was the year they had to update it. And so it happened to coincide with the STAR redesign, and they decided to go ahead moving forward anyway with the accountability overhaul. So if we were to explore this website, which we're not right now for sake of time, we would be able to dig into the different changes. And to sum up, it really comes down to 2 things. CCMR, so the changes that are going to happen in CCMR and how that affects our accountability, and then also changes in which student groups will be included and how learning acceleration or accelerated instruction will affect our accountability. Okay, if you can please move forward. So these are the 4 big changes to the accountability system. We'll take just a brief look at each one. And also please remember, Ms. Camacho is our expert in this area. She has been trying to keep us all up to date with her. So if you do have changes, I will do my best. Dr. Torres will do his best to answer, but if we can't quite answer it, we will make sure that she gets your questions. Okay, if you want to move forward. So STAR testing changes. This is not new for this year. We did know the STAR test was being changed last year, but now those scores are going to be reflected in our accountability. And historically, as you can see on that graph, every time the state redesigns the assessment, scores take a pretty big hit. And so there's definite change just across the state. So the most recent change was from the TAKS test shifting to the STAR test, and you can see that dramatic line right in the middle between that yellowish and pinkish bar. And so the state, you know, we have increasingly improved our performance as a state on the STAR test, even with the COVID dip, and then the STAR redesign is going to hit, and we're calling that STAR 2.0, and we don't know how that's going to turn out. You may have heard that the state has decided to postpone releasing accountability ratings because they are looking at things and they're reconsidering formulas. So that may or may not affect cut scores and what our final performance is. So we want to wait on that. So other changes, you can see the cross-curricular passage, new question types, evidence-based writing. So those are all changes that were reflected in the STAR test last year, and that we are actively encouraging our teachers and training our teachers on how to manage instruction in line with these changes. Okay, if you will move forward, please. So CCMR, like I said, that's one of the areas with the biggest change. The formulas are going to change because they're changing things like which IBCs count or which ones you can use anymore. And if students are in certain courses, that's going to count where it didn't count before. Things like that. The most important aspect of the CCMR changes is that it is going to be reflected in our 22-23 accountability rating using students who have graduated over a year ago. So even though our students were not here last year, what they did in high school in 21-22 is going to affect our accountability this year because of the way the accountability formula has changed. So if you stop and think about that, it's kind of like saying, who won the Super Bowl last year? Oh, let's stop, but let's go reevaluate that game and change the rules and see who comes out the winner. It's not fair, but that is the situation for CCMR. So even though it's not fair, we always know that CCMR counts, like there's a lag year, but to change the rules of how it's going to affect our rating in that lag year is frustrating, to say the least. But we will wait and see what happens when they do all their final figurings this month and see what it comes up with. Regardless of how it affects our accountability retroactively, we are definitely taking steps to address these new CCMR guidelines and factors. We already started last year, and we're continuing to work on them this year. Okay, if you will please move forward. So here's just a snapshot of what those changes are. The state is, like I said, some of the IBCs are no longer going to count. There will be new ones, the CTE course requirements. And then that percentage is huge. So where it used to be 60% to get an A, now you have to have 88% of students getting that CCMR indicator. And again, this is retroactive. So we cannot go back and fix or address or improve the number of students who had a CCMR indicator 2 years ago. And yet it's going to affect our accountability this year. All right, if you will please move on. And then the other big change is in the closing the gaps. So what we're looking at is which student groups are going to be evaluated. The state is increasing the number of subpopulations that are going to figure into our overall system. I didn't touch it, it just stopped. Okay, hello, okay. It was magic. The state's going to increase the number of subpopulations that they will consider in our overall rating to 4. I believe it used to be 2. And they're also going to reduce the number of students that it takes to create a subpop. So we may have a tiny group of, we only have 10 students of this particular population, and yet those 10 students are going to affect our overall accountability. So again, those kinds of changes are going to are part of what is causing the state to stop and reassess the overall formulas. Okay, if you will keep going. And then the way our districts is going to be rated overall is changed, which is based on campus size. So with our only having 4 campuses, actually 3 that count to accountability, it may not affect, our district in a great way, but if you think about other districts where they've got different size campuses all over the place. So it's just another change in the system that we can't control. Okay, if you will move on. So the state did give us some reports, like what if reports. So they took all the new accountability formulas and they used last year's data so we could see what it would have been last year with these new formulas. And in those cases, our letter grade did drop 2 letter grades, which is unfortunate in the what if. That was what if based on last year's data, not this current past year. And teachers to make sure we're addressing the needs of all student groups. And then I wanted to give principals each just a chance to highlight any action steps that they are taking. Anyway.
I saw the light blink in. Oh, I'm gonna pass. Thank you. I knew you would. So if you remember when we looked over data, my 7th grade math scores were rough, and so that's an area that we're focusing on. I have Miss Haddad, who is our math. She has all kinds of titles, but she's the math genius. She's working with my 7th grade teachers twice a week. And then we have an instructional coach in there with them the other 2 days a week. So we know that that's an area, and we know, well, it was an area last year, and then we know that the 6th graders coming in, there were some issues last year in 6th grade. We talked about that. So we know they're already coming with some gaps. So we are working hard to fill those gaps and to make sure that we are getting the best of what the 7th graders can give. And the 7th grade teachers. Like Dr. Morgan said, we're doing writing with everybody. We talk about it in every PLC. We talk about it in our PD days. Dr. Morgan has been doing a lot of presentations about it, and our English teachers, like, they get the writing piece, but maybe the social studies teacher, the math teacher are less comfortable. So we're trying to break that into pieces so they're much more comfortable with it. Because like she said, it's 30% now of that test, as well as being something they need for adulthood, for life. What else? We're doing tutoring after school. We started that today. And so those kids that didn't meet, we are working to try and fill some of those gaps. We have some new curriculum that we're looking at for that, as well as STEM scopes. And like she said, this will be our first full year, but the teachers who like really, really got into it, we saw huge gains with them. And so being sure that we have all of those teachers trained on all the parts of STEM scope, and that's the I can't even talk. High quality instructional material, all of those letters. Being sure that every teacher is trained and how to use all of that the way that they should. So I'll pass it off. That microphone magically started working. Just for you.
Okay, so to tag along with what she said, we have started the year with STEM scopes, which is something we were not able to do last year. We did not have all our materials, so that has been a priority for us. We also added a creative writing block in our specials, so that students are doing more writing and more purposeful writing, and not just they're writing in interactive journals, they're writing in the classroom, but we want to make sure that they're also doing some creative writing to get them to love writing and not just writing to satisfy a test question, if that makes sense. We want them to love writing. Our second grade team does an amazing job of writing, and then as we get to third grade and they keep building on skills, some of that love for writing kind of falls off because it's so focused. So that's why we added that creative writing, to make sure that we're picking up that piece. So that has been amazing. And she, the paraprofessional that's running that block, is also finishing up school to become a teacher, and she has taken it and run with it. And she's worked with Catherine Roberts through the library to do some things through literature with writing. So it's been an amazing thing to see. We also added an additional PLC this year, and our teachers are getting to conference all at the same time, which I don't know how we made this schedule work, but they have an 80-minute block, and we do PLCs twice a week. And we already have our PLC calendar all the way filled all the way through December with different things. Gay comes on a certain day of the month. Miss Camacho comes on a certain day of the month. Jennifer Lunsford comes on a certain PLC time, and they already have all that out in the agenda. So it's real focused on our PLCs, where before we were just having one day a week and their teams were split. So they may not be with their partner teacher. They may not be with everybody that's ELA, but with everybody having the same conference period, they can all focus on data at the same time, which is something we were unable to do before. So, and we're doing blended learning, but the teachers, we've bragged on them because they don't even realize they're doing blended learning, but we're doing blended learning across the entire building. It's a non-negotiable for them to do small group instruction. They just did not realize they were doing blended learning. We're like, you're already doing blended learning. So we've put a lot of things in place. We're super excited about this year and where we're headed instructionally. I just wish they wouldn't have changed the test this year, because we were on a good trajectory, and then that 30% of the test came in with the writing, and that just was really difficult for some of our kids. Any other questions? Okay.
We also are looking at gaps, excuse me, and the STAR test. I think it goes back to what the two principals said. It goes back to blended learning, using your data and individualizing. I think at the high school, we didn't lose any on our scores. We gained a little, and that was a lot considering all the math vacancies I had last year. But we worked the system, and we pretty well maintained. I think for us, the biggest thing we're going to zero in is the CCMR, because it has changed, and because in the 2 past years, the schedule is not set up to hit those indicators. So some of the steps we've taken is we have concentrate on TSI testing for the dual credit classes. The P-TECH classes and the strands are all aligned, and we're looking at, in those P-TECH, that every single child in there hit a CCMR indicator. We've also added College Bridge for seniors. That class will count as their TSI when they go to college. If they cannot pass that TSI, it's a lot of work, but last year we had a big group of them pass not only the math, but the reading. And then lastly, we looked at our schedule where we can fit in ACT or SAT prep classes or tutoring so that these kids can be ready for that test and qualified to get into college. Did I miss anything?
The big thing is that the changes in the IBCs, the industry-based certs, and so, you know, P-TECH's one lane, the other lane is our kids are going to get some type of certification depending on what avenue that they choose. And it counts.
Okay, I believe that was the last slide. Are there any questions?
A comment, from what I'm hearing and seeing with all of the lawsuits that are being filed across the state of Texas against Mr. Morass and all the folks, I think there's a very good chance that a state judge will put all of this on hold so that the double dip in letter grades, not saying it will disappear, but I think there's a good chance that it will be postponed. So I think it's just gonna be a wait and see, but.
I think you got a good point there. I mean, you know, prediction is over 80% of school districts will be dropping, you know, campuses or districts 1 to 2 letter grades. You're right, with that piece, there's a lot of, I've been getting emails and calls, and more people are joining every day, this lawsuit. And so we'll see what happens. Interestingly, the state came out with just last week and said, hey, we're gonna postpone it all the way. We do have a legislative session that's starting in October also, the third one. Yeah, we'll just see what happens. I will say this is, thank you, Dr. Morgan, for presenting and just making that very simple and clear to understand. But I'll say this is that, you know, when you go back and look at even what we did last year, improving in 11 different categories and making growth, and yet we could potentially drop, you know, a couple letter grades. It's that's why there's a lot of lawsuits going out there, and some things that just don't really make a whole lot of sense. But our focus is what they just spoke about. We're going to continue to keep doing the things that we're doing and focus on growing our kids, and all of our campus principals and C&I department have a good plan. I'm very proud of all the work that they put together just in the last month or two, and so we're off to a good start.
Thank you. We'll go to item number 8, consent agenda. Did anybody have any questions on the consent agenda? No? Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
A motion by Amber. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. All in favor? The motion passes. I put a 5. We'll go to item number 9, executive session at 8:03 p.m. We are going to reconvene from executive session at 8:09 p.m. We are now going to go into executive session at 8:09 p.m. for 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, 551.076, 551.082, and 551.0821. We will go to item number 11, consider approval memorandum of understanding with Gloria Latigo for professional development and coaching.
Okay, this, we've got Ms. Roden here to kind of speak on this, just regarding, Ms. Latigo and her, contracting her for services, so.
Hey, Ms. Rose, come on. Dr. Morgan broke the other one.
The Texas Education Agency requires that every secondary and high school English teacher have ESL certification. And if we have staff that do not, we have to file an application for an ESL waiver. That is due on November 1. And the same for teachers that are teaching in bilingual positions that have not completed their certifications. We have to file a bilingual exception application on that same date. If you are a district that needs to file an exception or a waiver, you have to spend 10% of your state bilingual allotment on professional development to make sure that these teachers in the positions that I have mentioned get the support they need. Number one, to appropriately teach the students that they have until they're certified, and secondarily, to provide support for them as they're prepping for the exam or exams that they have to take. And I believe that we determined that our state bilingual allotment last year was about $400,000, which means we have to spend $40,000 on professional development. And we have done that different ways over the past few years. We have sent teachers to training. We have contracted with the service center to come in and do coaching last year when we had a number of bilingual teachers that were not certified. But with a 4-day week, it's hard for us to send teachers away from the district to attend trainings because they only have 4 days a week to be in an instructional situation with their students. And this year it has flipped where we're working on helping 2 bilingual teachers get their certifications, but we have 9 secondary ESL teachers that will be under the waiver that will be applying for come November 1.
Anybody have any questions? No? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with Ms. Latigo.
Motion by Amber. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Kirby.
Thank you.
All in favor? Motion carries. Item number 12, consider recommendation to approve Mansfield ISD as a vendor.
Do you guys mind if I sit here and do it? Okay, okay, thank you. I'll carry this to the podium. As you know, in our budget adoption, we did, according to House Bill 3, adopt funds to cover 2 police vehicles. And so this is the recommendation to award Mansfield ISD with the purchase of those vehicles because the total amount exceeds $24,999. It requires board approval. So that's what we're asking for now, is to have the approval to utilize Mansfield ISD as a vendor for $26,000.
Anybody have any questions?
I'll make that motion that we approve Mansfield ISD as a vendor.
Okay, a motion was made by Joe,
I'll second.
second by Amber. All in favor? Motion carries. Item 13, consider the approval of 2 vehicles for the use with the Venus ISD Police Department.
So this item is just to kind of detail the 2 vehicles. Vehicle 1 is
or they're both a 2019 Ford Fusion. And the mileage on vehicle one's about 8,000 miles, vehicle two's 9,000 miles. We did run Kelly Blue Book values on these, and the Blue Book values are about 17,000 to 18,000. So we are getting a very good and marketable rate for both of these vehicles.
I'll make a motion to,
Do I have any questions? No? Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the two vehicles, for the use of the VISD Police Department.
Okay, motion made by Amber, second.
Second.
Second by Joe. All in favor? The motion carries. Item 14, consider the approval of the resolution designating the employee to serve as investment officers of the district and to invest district funds.
Section 2256.005 of the Texas Government Code requires the Board of Trustees of Venus ISD District to designate one or more officers or employees as investment officers of the district. We are asking for approval tonight to appoint the Superintendent of Schools and the Chief Financial Officer as the investment officers of the district.
A motion by Greg,
I'll second.
second by Amber. All in favor? Motion carries. I'm trying to flip the page and I can't, sorry. Okay, item 15. Annual review of the investment policy and investment strategy and adopt written instruments stating review of same and recording changes.
Also, according to Texas Code and Texas legal policy, that the board of trustees, in compliance with board policy CDA legal, the board is required annually to review the investment policy and investment strategies of the district. These items are presented here today, which is CDA local, which is our current investment policies, and we are not requesting any changes at this time, but we do, according to state statute, have to have the board review the policies and sign a written statement that they've reviewed the policies, and that's what we bring for you here tonight.
Those sheets, yes. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the investment policy and investment strategies and adopt written instruction or instrument staffing or stating review of the same and recording changes.
A motion by Amber, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe, all in favor? Motion carries. Item 16, consider approval of budget amendments for the 23-24 general fund.
I'm not very proud to bring you a budget amendment in September when we just adopted our budget. However, there were two things that I was unaware of at the time. If you'll see there on function.
The amendment, yeah. Thank you.
Function 52 there is an increase of $547, and I did put the details down kind of underneath it. It's an increase for Texas Comptroller receipt of $547. It is some funds that are given to school district police forces for training, and so it's specifically allocated from the Texas Comptroller for this training. The funds were deposited and increased in the budget with board approval last fiscal year, but the funds were not expended, and so they essentially just fell to the fund balance at the end of the year. And so we're asking that we will draw those funds out of fund balance so that we can appropriately expend them to the qualifications of the Texas Comptroller. In addition to that, the increase for the Texas Comptroller receipt for our child care receipt. So this is one of a few. This is the last check of several that you all have reviewed and approved over last year. This check was also deposited into the FY23 fiscal year in July, but the budget was not increased at that time. And so I think there was a budget amendment brought to you on July 17th that accounted for this, but unfortunately that didn't give Ms. Nelson appropriate time to expend these funds of $106,000. So she expended no funds. They all fell to fund balance. But due to the requirements of the Texas Comptroller and the availability of these funds, we do need to draw these out of fund balance so she can appropriately spend them, or we'll have to return them back to the state. And so we're requesting that to bring out. And so I do realize that it still shows a negative impact of fund balance in both of these increases that, but we are continuing to review that, and we'll be finding some savings, and hopefully once we get through that process, we'll be able to clear the negative there. But that's something we're actively seeking. But for now, we are asking to bring that up so we can appropriately expend those funds.
Do I have any questions? Have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the budget amendment.
Motion by Amber, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Kirby. All in favor? Motion passes. Item 17, consider approval of matters related to personnel, resignations, employment, position, or contract amendment.
We just need a motion.
Yeah, we just need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve all matters that were related to personnel, resignations, employment, positions, or contract amendments as,
Discussed.
discussed.
Motion by Amber, second.
I'll second.
Second by Kirby. All in favor? Motion carries. Reports.
Okay, you have all your reports attached there from all the different departments, listed there. If you have any questions on any of those or not, just updated information. If not, I'll just summarize on my end. Do you have anything, Mr. Moore? No? Okay. We are in week 7. We are moving right along. We're getting close to the end of the first quarter. It's hard to believe that we're already in the 7th week in a 9-week grading period. And yeah, and we're just, like I said, we're off to a great start. People are going 100 miles an hour and but working really, really hard. Very proud of what everyone's doing. It's homecoming week in Venus ISD, and so that's exciting. We've got activities, dress-up days. There's just a lot of, if you're on the campuses and seeing all the fun that people are having, as well as learning, it was good to see that today. We've got a parade, homecoming parade, our traditional homecoming parade, which is Wednesday, and then we'll kick it off or finish it up Friday with our football, volleyball game and our homecoming court and all those pieces. So exciting times. That's all I got. Mr. Moore?
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
If anybody has it on top of their head, what is our present enrollment?
Good question. Present enrollment, we are, I looked yesterday, I think we're right at, or not yesterday, I looked Friday, looked into today. We're just shy of 2,300 students. We're like 2,390 something, 2,290 something. So we are trending almost where we were at this time last year. Okay, it actually keeps climbing every week. It's climbed for the last 6 weeks, quite a bit the first 3 or 4 weeks, and now it's slowing down. We're looking at that, just like I said, on a daily basis, but we're just shy of 2,300 students.
Are we going to have to bring any more portables in this year?
No, not unless we get a huge influx of, 100 kids or something. As of now, we're tight, but no, unless we have a huge influx, we should be fine the rest of this year for not having to bring any more. I don't know, we look at our patterns and our trends. I've looked at the last, I think, 4 years of what we've trended. I can go back and look at each day. Ms. Flores in Peems has that for me. So unless we see something that is way out of the ordinary, we should be fine. And I don't anticipate that much of a huge increase in enrollment, because of housing market and all those other pieces. So we should be good.
And will we finish up the roofing program this week?
We're a little bit delayed because of the rain, so we all know, thank God we got rain, but at the same time, that slowed down things there. I have a meeting tomorrow morning with the roofers and the HVAC folks and all that, so I'll get an update on that. But we were, as of last week, we were about a week and a half out, and then the rain has come, and so we got to get caught up on that. Mr. Moore?
As those of you that have driven around the school during drop-off time in the morning, it's been a been pretty tough, but just so you know, today was, and Friday, and it's gotten better each day. We worked really hard as far as changing some of the rerouting of where the buses drop off versus car riders and those sorts of things. The ultimate thing is we have more tires than we do pavement. And so people have been somewhat conscientious of that as far as, and for those of you that have driven around, the city came in and added some stop signs just to adjust the flow so that it creates a situation where they actually have to stop.
I know, coming in,
Yeah.
I ran it.
Yeah, and so
You're not the only one that ran
Dr. Torres and I and Ms. Mayo, we met with the city on a Thursday, and Friday, they were putting stop signs out for us.
Very
So, I mean,
thankful for
they
that.
were very responsive to getting that done, and that afternoon, I'm driving, and one of the officers was out taking pictures, and I'm like, what are you doing out here in the street? He goes, I'm taking pictures to put this out, and da-da-da-da-da. He goes, I blew right through that one. So, don't feel bad.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's been just a continual process of trying to get that traffic to flow, and our, 2 officers have done a great job directing traffic and presence from the cities.
And help from the
So-
city, yeah.
Sergeant Lee's out there every single morning, cowboy hat and all.
Thank you, yes. All right.
Okay,
You have a
any
cricket?
other-
I'm sorry, she's got a flying cricket.
Oh. Any
Can't see
other
that. Here.
reports? Anybody have any questions on the reports?
No.
No? Okay. So we'll go to item number 19, board request for additional items. And next scheduled board meeting date is October 16th. Anybody have any requests for additional items?
October 16th?
Yep. No? No items? Then we will go to item number 20, adjourn at 10:02 PM.